r/Askreddit by Reddit and chill. Teachers of Reddit. What is your "this student is so dumb it's scary" story? Back when I was teaching high school, I was giving an exam to my first year students and one of them stole the key to the exam the second year students were taking. He was not subtle about it either. The whole fake a sneeze, go get tissue, pick up a large piece of paper and think your skinny teenage body can conceal it angle. I should have said something. But the fact that I was so fed up with this sort of crap by that point is one of the reasons I quit teaching high school. Anyway, that's not what made it such a dumb decision. What made it dumb was when he bombed the exam. He tried to claim that I purposely misgraded his exam because I hated him, and even got his mother in on it for a parent conference. Which means his own mother was front and center for me when I pointed out how his answer form was a perfect match for a test he didn't take. Mom was not happy with him, to say the least. Though for the icing on the cake, she did ask that I let him retake the real test. And since she honestly seemed to care a lot more than many of the parents I met, and since I did admittedly feel a little guilty for not trying to prevent it in the first place, not that I admitted to that part. As a compromise we let him come after school to retry at a penalty. And in the end, he freaking aced the test. He was normally a C student or so. And if he'd just done that the first time, the weight of the exam probably would have bumped him up low B. Aesop couldn't have turned it into a better cheaters never prosper fable. And in the end, he freaking aced the test. He was normally a C student or so. Makes me suspicious that he found a way to more successfully cheat the second time around. Did you give him a different exam than what all of his classmates had? I teach 5th grade. I had to explain to a student walking in line. He would never walk in line correctly. Finally, after correcting him for the 1000th time, he snapped. "What do you mean? What do you mean get in line? What's the line? Why do teachers always say that?" It never occurred to me he didn't understand after being in school for years. He was the best though. One of my favorites. He's definitely gonna take philosophy. As a university student, I've seen a bunch of cooking disasters. My favorite was when a girl tried to make mac and cheese with vodka instead of water because she didn't trust the tap water. There was a small fire and my entire residence hall had to stand outside for an hour and a half in the middle of the night while it got put out. I had a classmate put a thermometer into the middle of a Bunsen burner to see how hot the fire was. As glass and mercury promptly exploded everywhere. I'm pretty sure I saw the teacher's soul leave her body. Never saw her look so horrified or pissed before. Classmates and I were 12. Edit. I'm English. Yes. We still use those thermometers. This happened in like 2011 to 2012. That's not so bad, I feel. Student could have used a bit more foreknowledge. But curiosity is what builds STEM. On a number of occasions, around 5 or 6, I have had to explain to students that you can still get pregnant even if you don't orgasm. Apparently, it's an old wives' tale in a bunch of cultures. And when I corrected them, they fought back. It's a really old wives' tale. Interestingly, probably from as far back as ancient Greece, via Aristotle, or even further. For dailybeast.com link, this isn't really a scholarly article but it does mention it. When I was student teaching, I had one who was just on the verge of passing, thanks to the incredible mercy of the primary teacher. All he needed to do was turn in a worksheet that he finished in class. I know that he finished it because I watched him and helped him do it. All he had to do was give it to the teacher. But, in his mind, that would mean that she had won. So he refused to turn it in. I left the school before the end of the semester. But I would bet money that he failed the class. I work with kids 12-18 and the amount of middle schoolers who do all of their work and pack it around in their bag without ever putting it in the homework box or handing it to the teacher is astounding. If anyone figures out why they do this, please help me lol. Edit. Thanks to everyone who shared their stories. I think I gave some better insight now. Hopefully I can help my kiddos more with some starting points. I had a little boy, 1st grade, who always got 14 as his answer to every problem no matter what. On the second day of school I sat down to do 3 plus 2 with him using counters. We set out a pile of 3 and a pile of 2. I told him to count and watched in horror as he pushed the counters into a line and then counted back and forth, recounting them until he got to 14. That was the biggest number he knew. He would have just kept going on. Oh no. At least this is while he's young, when it can be easily corrected. I like his thought process. Oh. If I keep going you'll find the answer eventually goes to show that if he didn't have the limit of 14 he would just keep going. Get him into something where that kind of mentality works. Kids asked me, "Are you from Detroit or some other city I forget?" I said neither. I moved here from Pennsylvania. One girl gasped and asked, "Do they have slaves there?" Not legally. I'm a flight instructor. Had a student who really wasn't cut out for flying. Before each lesson his job was to do a pre-flight on the airplane and make sure everything was working. One of the items you check during the pre-flight are the flaps. Basically, they are a flap of metal that extends from the aft section of the wing and drops down into the airstream during landings. Well, we fly a Cessna 172 where the wings are on top of the cockpit, above the pilot, and the flaps are situated just behind the door. Without fail, this guy opens the door, moves the switch to deploy the flaps, and turns around to run face first into the flaps he just lowered. It's funny the first, concerning the second time, and expected after the 10th time. Every single lesson. One of my 10th graders said she saw crime being committed, bike being stolen in neighbor's yard, and she wanted to call 911 but she didn't know the number. I'm not a teacher, but I used to volunteer in my daughter's classrooms when they were in elementary school. One day while I was helping grade papers, it became quite apparent that one little girl had copied from the boy sitting next to her. Not only were the answers the same, she also had written his name on top of her paper. History gym teacher was telling us about catching people cheating. He said he was always for people who thought up creative ways. On the other hand, when you get a paper that's the same as another, word for word, including one particular misspelled word, with a spelling written above it, well, I don't usually wear glasses when I teach, except for one day, and it was subsequently a big deal among all my 5th graders. The next day, at the start of class, I noticed a girl in the front row wearing glasses for the first time. Something seemed a little off, so I finally decided to chime in. "Emily, what's the deal with the glasses? These? I need them to see. But they don't have any lenses." She appeared befuddled and said, "They don't?" before lifting her finger up to one of the eye frames and poking herself in the eye. "She's still poking. You can't change my mind." I was a former college recruiter who used to set up a booth at low-income schools to help guide first-generation students into college. Had a high school girl come up to me and tell me she wants to be a gynecologist. So I start talking about which schools have good pre-med programs, the kind of classes she would need to take. Broaching the idea of med school, she says, "Hold up. A gynecologist is a doctor?" I say yes. She says, "Well, I do not want to go to medical school. I just want a job where I can look at vaginas all day." We ended up talking about possibly cosmetology school or esthetician school. Also, she was not kidding. I got many dumb questions like this. When you don't know, you don't know. She says, "Well, I do not want to go to medical school. I just want a job where I can look at vaginas all day." I think she just wants to be a lesbian. After all the stuff his mom has allowed and or encouraged him to do, David with rubber bands must be catastrophic. I mean, David ate rubber cement. What the hell did he do with rubber bands? Edit. Showed this to my friend. She suggested he may have wrapped them around his penis because it felt good or something. Teaching laboratory skills. Asked a student to mix a tube by turning it upside down gently a few times. Immediately turned it upside down without putting the cap on first. Edit. Student was a senior undergraduate, so maybe 21 years old. I swear this is sometimes how hypnosis works. You get someone to focus on something so intently, then ask them to do something, and they just go on autopilot without thinking about what they're doing. Told to me by a friend. Written in his words. The other day I had a student bite into a bar of deodorant. Just chomped right into it. As if it were a coconut and palm tree scented ice cream bar. This. After making like he was going to lick it and accidentally getting the taste of the deodorant and his own residual pit sweat. Half a second later he just went whole hog on it and took a chunk out of it. Then spat it out. I didn't know whether to call poison control or the principal. I thought I would be teaching about plate tectonics today. Ended up having to do a lesson on why the earth isn't flat. Oh no, how old are your students? Not from when I was teaching. But a buddy's classmate. HS class was discussing the number of stars in the galaxy. My buddy jokingly says 20. Kid next to him, notably not the sharpest kid I've known, goes, "Are you stupid? There's gotta be 100 of them. Maybe even 1,000. Serious as can be. Honestly not sure what's dumber. Him thinking the guess of 20 was real. Or him thinking that 1,000 might be too high. I tried counting once and there are definitely less than 1,000. Source. I'm in a city and can barely see Orion's belt from here. I'm a professor grading papers now and I have a few contenders right here. This one student blatantly plagiarized in his first paper. I mean just cutting and pasting from web pages. He didn't even streal form the primary sources and they weren't even scholarly web pages. I was so surprised at how badly he plagiarized that I gave him the benefit of the doubt that maybe he didn't understand what it really was. I just gave him a 0 along with an email describing the issue in detail with some additional links for whole sites that do the FAQs really well. We met. And I explained it to him. He was abjectly apologetic and explained that he had missed the nuances before. Grading the final paper. Same shit all over again. And I test this stuff using a free website I found just on Google and it takes like 2 minutes to check. What the duck is he thinking? Also the non-plagiarized part, it's so poorly written I don't know how even got in. Much less made it to be a junior at a selective school. The guys is also pre-med. WTF. Hahaha. What was his response after getting caught the second time? When I was a professor I had a student submit a paper she clearly hadn't written. I called her out on it and she complained by email to me and CC'd the dean of the school. Her argument was that it was hers because she had paid her own money to have it written. I volunteered to do the book fair for my old middle school. My mom was the assistant librarian. I had a 7th grader come up to purchase a poster of a car. The price was $3. He pulled out $2 $1 bills and set it on the desk in front of me. He then pulled out a handful of change and set it on the table. He asked, "Is this enough?" I said, "Well, you need $1 more." He then picked out 2 quarters and 2 dimes. "Now?" he asked. I said, "That's 70 cents. You need 30 more." He picked out 3 nickels and added them to the pile. "There you go," he said. I then proceeded to ask him what he thought the denominations for each coin were. And he legit did not know. I had to give him a quick lesson in the value of each coin and helped him count out $1 in change. To me, this situation is ridiculous. We will all have to deal with money throughout our lives. You have to learn to know the value of each coin and know how to add money. Today I learned that American coins don't have their numerical value printed on them. That's gotta confuse tourists. Not a teacher. This one moron currently in my master's program makes me question if I'm actually in a mental institution. How someone like him managed to get into what is generally considered a top tier program is beyond understanding. From contributing 0 to group projects, to bring an active detriment to group effort. It seems like he is trying to be difficult. His final, ready to be submitted portion of one class's big final project had 30 plus spelling errors. Including but not limited to revenue, developed, aces instead of acres, this one repeated 6 times, constraints instead of constraints, pencils, school, Excel, height instead of height. It goes on and on. This was just the errors in one project in one class. I happened to have him in all 3 classes and I happened to have him in all 3 group projects. In one group, we collectively sent him 33 emails and text messages with highlights, bullet points, step-by-step corrections, and he completely ignored them all. Only to blow up at us in a group meeting about how we were all bullying him and he didn't understand what he was doing wrong. He would argue with us about whether he was right or not, whether his abysmal work needed to be edited or not. He never spell checked a damn thing. He never reviewed his own work once. He is the biggest piece of shit mentally challenged student I have ever met. Yet somehow he got into this program. I hate this dumb duck. Ducking like and subscribe.